Today, we continue refreshing our '04 Grand Cherokee. This Jeep was a good deal, but it was a little rough, so we're using a few tricks and a lot of elbow grease to raise its value. It's all today here on Truck Tech.
Hey guys, welcome to Truck Tech. Today we're back on our '04 Jeep Grand Cherokee Limited, powered by a 4.7 liter V8 with an all-wheel drive transfer case. Now we picked this thing up for cheap because the dealership it was going to get traded into wasn't going to give much for it because it was in overall kind of poor condition. So we figured we'd put a little bit of elbow grease into it, maybe a few bucks, and we'd end up with something that's nicer to drive or something that we can sell, flip, and make a few bucks on.
Now, part of that elbow grease was showing you guys a pretty universal repair. It's something very common in late model vehicles. We showed you how to fix a split in a urethane bumper cover. Check it out. Now, just like when you bodywork sheet metal, the goal is to get the substrate or the material you're working on straight and flat, or as flat as possible. In this case, we're using heat and some auto body tools to get the shape back to where it was once molded. Then, drying the water off sets it up for the next stage of the repair, which is really kind of cool. We're using an attachment on our stud welding kit that literally melts staples into the back side of the repair, holding it in place and doing so permanently. Simple prep on the back side makes it a little safer to handle, and a little bit of insurance in the form of a two-part epoxy on the front lets us apply filler in a conventional auto body repair format. 2 stages of filler, and we're ready for the next step, which is primer.
Now the interior definitely needed some attention as well. And with the seats pulled out, we were able to get in here with a vacuum cleaner. And underneath all the dog or cat hair and trash, there's some carpet that's in pretty good condition. Just like the rest of the interior. It just needs to be cleaned and wiped down. We should be okay. Looks like the only thing we're gonna have to spend money on is a shift indicator or a trim piece. It's kind of trashed. So it'll give us an opportunity to pull the console, clean up all this nasty, and we should be in good shape. And the seats, that's Kevin's job.
These seats, like the rest of the vehicle, well, they're not destroyed. They're just in really bad condition due to neglect. And there's no obvious tears or splits in the seams. There's just wear marks here in the seat buns. The passenger side seat, well, it's not any different. There's just obvious wear here and there, which is good news for us because we don't have to spring for new leather seat covers. Even though there are companies like CatSkin that will reskin this entire seat for you and it'll fit and look great, we just don't want to spend the money because we want to make money on the vehicle. So thanks to Duplicolor, we've got options. Now they've got several different colors of this vinyl and fabric dye. We're obviously going to use black. Now the seats aren't a really dark black. They're more of a dark gray, but that's okay because if we do all 4 of them, well, we'll have the same effect and we can make these things look almost brand new. But before we do any kind of a refinish job, just like everything else, there's some prep and some cleaning. We're going to do several stages of cleaning, including a solvent-based cleaner and a water-based cleaner to make sure everything gets out of the grain of that leather and vinyl. But the first thing, just like the 80s rock band, we're going to get the funk out because we don't know who's been sitting in those seats and if they had pants on. Okay, our solvent cleaner serves 2 purposes. We test for color fastness to see if it's going to pull the color out of the leather, and it serves as a very aggressive cleaner. Acetone is really good for this purpose. So, give it a little shot. Color stays there. We're getting a little bit more funk out, so we keep on cleaning. You can see how quickly it evaporates. That's why it's good for this purpose. Look at that. Boy, those are dirty. When you're sure the surface is clean, there's one more step in the process, which is profiling or scuffing up the top surface of the seat. The gray scuffing pad roughs it up just enough to give the vinyl dye a little bit better chance of sticking. Along with our fabric dye, we picked up some prep wipes from Duplicolor. These come in a sealed package and are really convenient since you don't have to buy a gallon of cleaning solvent. Use as many as you need to and wipe the top surface one more time for a good thorough cleaning. Keep in mind that this stuff sticks around a while, and if you start to paint right away, you might trap some of that solvent in the cracks and crevices of the seat, so give it a good chance to dry first. The first coat is obviously a light coat. You want to make sure that you're setting up the surface to take on the subsequent or following coats of the vinyl and leather dye. So you're using smooth and even coats with an even overlap. And by the way, get ready for your forearm and your finger to get sore. Suck it up, life's hard. You want to leave it about 15 minutes in between coats, and we are applying 3 coats to the seats. Because the color is black and because it sprays out pretty thick, you could cover it all in one coat, but you could set yourself up for failure that way and create a condition known as bridging. Bridging is when the paint sticks to the paint, but it's not really stuck to what you're painting. If that doesn't make any sense, basically you're putting a blanket on top of the surface that could be yanked off and come off on your clothes or just flake off and look bad. So 3 light coats, making sure you've got complete coverage is the correct way to do this and make it a permanent and really nice looking repair. With this particular product, you've got the option of either a high gloss or a flat finish. We're using the flat finish since leather really doesn't have a high gloss ever. In case you're wondering why we're using a vinyl and fabric dye on leather, well, here's a misnomer. Leather is typically just on the top surface. The sides of a leather seat are most of the times vinyl. Well, it is as easy as that, and as you can see, they look really good. It's not a substitute for recovering the seats, but it makes them look really good, and it's not going to come off on your clothing. Keep in mind, we burned up a whole can just doing the 2 seats. So if you're going to do the rest of the interior or the back seat or maybe a center console, factor that in to how many cans for this vinyl dye that you purchase. Not bad.
Hey guys, welcome back to the shop and the freshening up of our 04 Jeep Grand Cherokee. Now this WJ comes with nice 17-inch aluminum wheels, and the other 3 are in pretty good shape. This one's not bad, but it's got a little bit of a gouge here on the wheel lip. It doesn't affect the wheel structurally, it just doesn't look that good. So we're going to see what we can do about fixing this little blemish. All right, now with the tire removed from the wheel, we can do a little bit of TIG welding and make this cosmetic repair. The first thing we got to do is clean up the damaged area and get rid of this chunk of broken aluminum. Next, we're going to grind the area where we're going to be making the repair, because we've got to get all that dirt and grime out of the texture of the damaged area. If we left it in there, we'd be fighting porosity and contamination in the weld and probably have to grind it down and redo it. We're also grinding off a little bit of the surrounding clear coat for the same reason. Once that's done, we fired up our Miller Diversion 165 TIG welder and got to work laying down some filler aluminum. Now normally, showing the detail of any type of arc welding can be challenging, but our camera guy Rob, he's got a technique down that allows you to see the process and not just the finished result. It's pretty neat to see the individual beads form on the weld.
Basically just building up this wall here. A little bit of aluminum we're going to reshape later.
Now what I'm trying to do is basically stack weld beads on top of each other until there's enough material or aluminum there to be reshaped with a grinder. Now on a small cosmetic repair like this, that's something you might want to try at home. But if the wheel is badly damaged or cracked, well, you might need to just replace the wheel altogether, or at the least take it to a professional shop and have it repaired. And with the welding done, we swapped the welding helmet for some safety glasses and got to work reshaping all the aluminum. Started out with a cutoff wheel just to get the rough shape, and then moved on to something a little less aggressive, like this die grinder with a medium grit sanding disc on it. We just generally brought the wheel back to its shape. Now this isn't an exact science. We're basically just eyeballing it, and it's not going to be absolutely perfect. Right there, but it's more of a lip. But after some careful grinding and filing and resurfacing, you can get pretty darn close. Now the sanding disc left some scratches in the aluminum, so to get rid of those and level things out, I'm using a die grinder and a coarse resurfacing disc to finish things up. All right, well, it's not a perfect repair, but it's a lot better than what it was. And unless you were looking for it, well, you probably never see it. Now, if this was a fully polished aluminum wheel, you could spend a little bit more time making it nearly perfect, and it'd be a nearly undetectable repair. but this is a machine finish wheel with a clear coat. I guess we could strip all the clear coat off, re-clear the entire thing, and you'd probably never see it. But we're going to cover it up and change the look of the vehicle with a little bit of wheel paint.
Hey, welcome back. Well, a while ago you saw me fix this plastic bumper cover, and now it's in finishing putty ready for primer surfacer. I've also fixed some of the gouges and whiskey nicks in the side cladding and some of the other parts of this vehicle, including the front bumper, and knocked out some of the dents in the sheet metal, because we're trying to flip this rig, and let's face it, we can make a lot more money if the bodywork's in good shape and it's nice and shiny. But we didn't fix everything. We saved a good one for you guys. Now, this is not necessarily the worst dent, but it's the most interesting because there's a bunch of different stuff at play, and it's a little bit of a challenge. Now, you can see the scratches here, and you might be able to see some of the metal distortion, but now I bet you really can. I've got something to reflect against the black sheet metal, and it's pretty evident. It's been pushed in, and it's been pushed in at a weird angle from the side. Now, your knee jerk is to get in behind it and pop it out from the back, like a bedside in a pickup truck, but not so fast. Because back here, you can see that we don't have access to any of this. It's a double-walled panel, and it's protecting the fuel filler neck, so we got to think of something else. Now, normally what I do is grind this down to metal, use my stud welder, and just pull it out from the front. But guess what this is? This is our fuel neck. That's the fuel source. There might be vapors coming out of there, so I want to avoid sparks at all costs. So we're going to have to get creative, find a way to maybe pry it out from the inside, not blow ourselves up. So we're going to pull this taillight out. What we have here is a vent. Gives me access to this score.
This is a paintless dent repair kit from Matco, and it includes everything you need to do paintless dent repair. But that's not what Kevin's doing today. What we're doing is basically using one of the tools as an adjustable pry bar so we can get in behind the dent and apply a little pressure to the backside of the sheet metal.
With the PDR tool set at the appropriate angle, now it's just a matter of getting a feel for the metal and poking and seeing how it responds. Typically, you stab for the lowest point of the dent first, and sometimes that carries the rest of the damage back into the correct shape. But it is a lot of trial and error and takes some futzing around. But here's the tip I want to pass on that I use a lot in auto body work. Use the reflection on your surface to tell you where you are. All right, that popping means there's still pressure. You gotta figure out where the pressure is. Look to the edges of it. There's pressure there, pressure down here. Now, you've probably noticed by now just how flimsy this sheet metal is. Well, that's just standard in today's vehicles. The sheet metal is used for aesthetics, for aerodynamics, and typically has very little to do with the strength or safety of the vehicle. That's all engineered into the unibody. So basically, we're just massaging the shape back in for the looks of it. You can see by the reflection that most of the dent has been worked out, and we're getting really close to our shape. The hammer comes in to add a little bit of pressure in the opposite direction and bring the sheet metal back in where I've hyperextended it with the pick of the PDR tool. This back and forth motion stretches the metal to where it more closely resembles the shape that it had before it was damaged. A peek at the inside really gives you some perspective on what's involved in a unibody construction. You can clearly see the separation between the inner and outer sheet metal, and of course the corrosion protection, which is why some of these vehicles last so much longer. Everything is bathed in an epoxy primer. It also shows you that with a severe collision, the damage can transfer from the outer to the inner layer and cause misalignment issues that take either a lot more money to repair or a lot more time to work out. Now I'm going to use a heel dolly from Matco to reach inside the quarter panel and brace the metal so I can peen some of the high spots back into shape. When you're doing a repair like this, just keep in mind that every action from the hammer creates a reaction in the metal, and you just have to monitor your progress. You can tell by the light and the reflection that our shape is back where we want it. So now just a skim coat of filler and we're done. Hey, welcome back. Well, Well, so far so good. We've managed to straighten the metal out on this quarter panel by using pry bars and getting in behind the damage and massaging it out that way rather than pull it out from the front using a stud welder. We're working right beside the fuel filler, and we didn't want to create sparks if we didn't have to. Well, we're no longer at that stage. I got to grind the paint off and get down to the bare metal to apply the filler. So now we're going to use a little common sense. This is simply a damp paper towel, and I'm going to follow it with some masking tape to give myself a bit of a vapor barrier. I haven't blown myself up doing body work yet, and I don't plan on doing it in front of you guys. It might seem like overkill, but it's going to eliminate the possibility of igniting fuel vapor either with sparks or static electricity. The marker just serves as a guideline to let me know if everything else is covered up with dust, where I want to grind, and where I want to stop, more importantly. I'm using a 24 grit disc on an angle grinder. This is a very aggressive scratch pattern and eliminates any paint or primer and allows me to go right to the bare metal substrate. Now here's a trick that Jackie Carter showed me a long time ago. Taking 80 grit on a dual action sander, feather out past where you're grinding. This allows you to taper your filler application smoothly into the paint so there's no transition and no bump that maps through the paint. Typical polyester filler, aka Bondo, is applied first, followed by blocking with 36 grit and then shaping with 80 grit, which sets it up perfectly for the fine talc finishing putty, which fills in pinholes and any errant 36 grit scratches that you may have missed with your 80. So this dent, like the rest of the damage on the vehicle, is ready for a high build primer surfacer, one more round of blocking, and then we can shoot some color on it. We're going to prime it all at one time, and next time you see this thing, we'll show you how to spot paint and blend. There's not much that's as cool looking or safe and reliable as a properly installed AN fitting on a stainless hose. Well, you guys that have done these hoses, you know that just doing them by hand, sometimes it's questionable whether they're seated properly, could lead to a failure. That's where Koul Tools comes in. Koul Tools fixtures come in all the popular sizes and basically mount at a bench vise and allow you to push on your hoses and lines quickly and easily. And if you're working with push-style fittings, well, Koul Tools has just come out with their new hose press, making it even easier bypassing the bench vise. Koul Tools is sold wherever fine tools and equipment are available.
Now, we've all been in the situation where you're installing a stereo or an air tank or maybe some fog lights, and some of the components go inside the vehicle and some of them go out. And you've got to run those air lines or wires through the firewall and seal them from the elements. Well, this Daystar Firewall boot may solve a problem for you. All you need to do is drill an 1.5 inch hole in the firewall, the boot will seal to it, and then you're left with 3 different options as far as wire bundle or airline bundle sizes, from 3/8 all the way up to 1 inch. Once you're done, simply secure it with a zip tie, and you're in good shape. And sometimes it's just the little things that put a finishing touch on the project you're working on and make everything complete.
If you're looking for a vehicle-mounted winch that doubles as a workstation, look no further than the Warrant PowerPlant Dual Force HD with a 12,000-pound pulling capability. The winch itself features 80 feet of steel rope and accessories like a hook, a fair lead, and the new next-generation controller. But that's when the winch stops and the workstation kicks in, with an onboard air compressor that includes an accessory bag that holds a gauge, a tire chuck, 12 feet of air hose, various fittings, as well as mounting hardware and some other air compressor accessories. The compressor itself is capable of 5 CFM at 90 PSI, making it versatile enough for a variety of different air tools, making the PowerStation HD great for off-road or on the job. Thanks for watching Truck Tech. See you guys soon.